What if the most devastating weapon on the battlefield is not a missile, but a signal, one you cannot see or hear? Imagine standing on a front line fortified with the latest armor, soldiers braced for attack, trenches dug deep, and every piece of heavy equipment primed for battle. You expect thunderous barrages, the roar of engines, the scream of shells overhead. Instead, silence. No warning, no explosion, just the sudden, jarring collapse of the lines. This is not a scene from a dystopian novel, but the reality that unfolded near Pokrovsk, where the Ukrainian defense unraveled in a matter of hours, not days or weeks. Troops abandoned their posts in waves, leaving behind not only personal belongings and supplies, but even armored vehicles, some with engines still running, radios set to static, and ammunition untouched. Satellite images later revealed long convoys, miles of headlights snaking into the darkness, retreating deep into the interior, leaving behind warehouses filled with equipment and food. These were not the usual scars of a hard-fought retreat. This was something new, something chilling in its speed and completeness. Officials in Kyiv insisted it was a tactical retreat, a calculated maneuver to conserve lives and resources. On paper, it sounded plausible. After all, history is filled with such tactical withdrawals. In World War II, for example, the Soviet Red Army would frequently fall back in the face of superior German forces to regroup, trading land for time. But what happened at Pokrovsk was fundamentally different. On the ground, eyewitnesses and frontline sources described a scene of confusion, panic, and disintegration. Instead of a controlled withdrawal, the collapse was chaotic. Battalions disintegrated. Communications failed. Entire units lost contact with headquarters and with each other. Outposts surrendered without firing a shot, and isolated groups wandered, leaderless and cut off, some eventually captured or simply vanishing into the countryside. So what really happened? Was this simply a failed retreat, or did an unseen enemy target the very nerve center of the defense? Every indication suggests the latter. This was not a defeat by superior firepower, but by something more insidious. A deliberate, coordinated attack on the connectivity that binds a modern army together. They silenced radios, blinded drones, and severed the command chain using nothing more than invisible commands and blasts of electronic interference. If this is the future of war, the danger stretches far beyond Ukraine. Every nation relying on digital systems, whether for defense, infrastructure, or daily life, is suddenly vulnerable. When your technology can be turned against you, national security itself teeters on a knife edge. To understand how this happened, we need to look beyond the familiar imagery of war, tanks, soldiers, trenches, and peer into the invisible world of signals, networks, and code. The battle near Pokrovsk may well mark the dawn of a new era in warfare, one that echoes the seismic shifts of the past. Just as the introduction of the tank during the First World War or the atomic bomb during the Second World War changed everything, so too does this new weapon threaten to rewrite the rules. It started quietly, supply routes severed, radios fading to silence, and rumors crawling across the front. Before dawn near Pokrovsk, officials called the Ukrainian troop movements a controlled relocation, a tactical withdrawal to regroup and conserve strength. But their careful language could not conceal what was actually happening. Eyewitnesses described a far bleaker scene. Command posts fell apart, frontline soldiers stranded, and orders lost in a fog of static. Radios crackled with nothing but interference, drones went dark, and officers found themselves cut off from both superiors and allies. It was as if the digital nervous system of the army had been severed in one clean stroke. Analysts quickly realized this was not a simple artillery rout. The real blow struck deeper. The army's information lifelines were the first to fall. This was a surgical strike aimed at the networks that held everything together, jamming and crippling communication until entire units were left in the dark. Unlike the trench warfare stalemates of World War I or the blitzkrieg of World War II, this was a battle fought in the ether, in a spectrum invisible to the naked eye. For the first time in this war, it was not relentless shelling or airstrikes that broke the line, but an invisible famine, Information hunger. When the flow of orders stopped and positions became guesses, the defense did not collapse from panic so much as from blindness. It was the digital equivalent of being struck blind and deaf in the middle of a firefight. As the military's digital nervous system was cut, orientation vanished. Some crews simply left their vehicles, not because of enemy fire, but because coordinating a retreat became impossible. Others scattered into isolated pockets, their commanders unable to reach headquarters or neighboring units. One can imagine the confusion: a tank crew, fully armed, waiting for orders that never come, finally abandoning their post not from fear, but from utter uncertainty. Satellite images later showed convoys streaming away, not just battered trucks, but working armor abandoned mid-escape. The collapse was too swift for any planned withdrawal. In previous wars, like the retreat from Dunkirk in World War II, chaos reigned, but always in the face of overwhelming firepower. At Pokrovsk, the army was defeated by silence. Despite official claims of repositioning, the truth was clear. The front was not just bending, it was unraveling. The chaos spread, invisible but total. The collapse resembled not a battle lost, but a system failure, a power grid flickering off in a storm. This was not a mere tactical setback. If leaders or the public mistake this for a routine retreat, they risk disaster. The lesson is stark. When the battlefield goes quiet, it may already be lost. So what truly caused the collapse? The answer was not found in trenches or ruined vehicles. It was somewhere in the invisible air above them, a war waged across the electromagnetic spectrum. The spectrum is the battlefield of the 21st century, and the weapons are code, interference, and misinformation. But how did this new kind of attack unfold, and who orchestrated it? To understand, we need to follow the signals that vanished into silence. Picture fighting blind, deaf, and utterly alone, while your enemy sees every move. That is what Ukrainian units near Pokrovsk endured. Within hours, radios went dead, drones fell silent, and officers lost all real-time intelligence. No satellite updates, no encrypted apps, no backup channels. Every tool they relied on, gone. Desperate, they tried backup systems. But each signal was jammed, every frequency flooded with noise. On screens, cryptic characters replaced vital orders. Calls for help dissolved into static. Even encrypted apps and satellite phones failed, smothered by a force they could not see or trace. This was not the first time in history that armies have faced confusion. Think of Napoleon's retreat from Russia when blizzards and poor communication led to disaster. But never before has it happened so instantly and so completely. Far from the front, analysts pored over satellite feeds. What they saw was chaos. Huge convoys of vehicles retreating disorderly, abandoning trucks, ammunition, and armored carriers. Some left untouched, engines still warm. This was no planned withdrawal. It was a rout, with squads splintering, leaders missing, and no clarity on who still commanded. In past wars, such as the Korean War's retreat from the Chosin Reservoir, confusion and weather slowed withdrawals, but the chain of command remained. At Pokrovsk, command evaporated. The terror was not from shells or bombs. It was the sudden void. No commands, no updates, not even a sense of the battlefield. Orders vanished, rumors replaced facts, and confusion spread. In the absence of guidance, trust shattered, along with the chain of command. This is the power of information warfare. Erode trust, and the structure collapses from within. Investigators now believe this was a coordinated, multi-layered assault. First came pinpoint jamming, erasing communications. Then, forged messages sowed confusion, sending troops in circles. Finally, supply routes and escape paths were severed, stranding some, scattering others. The effect was not unlike the German use of paratroopers in the opening hours of the Battle of Crete in World War II. Attack everywhere at once, and the defenders lose cohesion. There were no waves of missiles or thunder of artillery. Only a silent, invisible onslaught, the digital field effect. Pokrovsk's defenses crumbled, not by firepower, but by the erasure of its digital nervous system. It is a scenario military planners have long feared, but rarely witnessed so vividly. The warning could not be plainer. If entire armies can be blinded and broken this way, what stops whole nations from falling, undone by an enemy that strikes only in code, without firing a shot? And if Pokrovsk was just a rehearsal, then what will tomorrow's wars look like? Imagine a city, London, Warsaw, or Seoul, paralyzed not by bombs, but by the sudden loss of communications, public panic, and the collapse of essential services as digital systems go dark. In the past, cities like Leningrad or Stalingrad could endure siege through sheer physical resilience. In the digital age, a blackout of information could be just as devastating. In the aftermath, survivors struggled to piece together what had happened. Their confusion hinted at a deeper vulnerability facing every modern military. Is it possible to build an army more resilient to digital onslaught, or has the very nature of warfare changed forever? Pokrovsk may be remembered not for the craters left by shells, but as the first casualty of an invisible war, a conflict waged in silence, where devastation comes before a single shot is fired. The psychological impact is profound. Soldiers who do not trust their own orders are soldiers who cannot fight effectively. Emerging evidence suggests this was no ordinary defeat. Instead, it was a calculated demonstration. Victory achieved not with bombs, but by severing digital lifelines. The attackers dismantled Ukrainian defenses by cutting off communications, blinding soldiers, and leaving commanders voiceless. The world has seen similar tactics before, albeit on a smaller scale. During the Gulf War, coalition forces jammed Iraqi communications, but never to the point of complete paralysis. At Pokrovsk, the effect was total. Security experts now debate a radical idea: enforcing a digital quarantine by isolating entire regions from external networks. Yet, in a world where supply chains and military operations depend on seamless connectivity, such isolation could paralyze societies, not just armies. Think of the effects of massive internet outages, like the one that struck much of the eastern United States in 2016. Banking, transportation, even emergency services ground to a halt within hours. Now imagine it in wartime. Around the globe, governments are rattled. The Pokrovsk incident has triggered alarms from Europe to Asia, as strategists confront a chilling question. If battlefield networks can be silenced so thoroughly, could cities like London, Warsaw, or Seoul be next? During the Cold War, nuclear annihilation was the great fear. Now, it may be digital annihilation. Trust in secure communications, once the unbreakable backbone of national defense, now trembles. Military officers, government officials, even everyday citizens, none can be certain their messages are safe or that the orders they receive are genuine. The very certainty that knits a nation together is now threatened by code, not cannon fire. This erosion of trust can be more destabilizing than physical destruction. International organizations scramble for answers. Diplomatic proposals for a formal investigation multiply, but no one has claimed responsibility. In the shadows, suspicion festers, and every nation wonders who is building the next digital weapon. History offers a parallel. After the first use of poison gas in World War I, nations scrambled to understand and defend against a weapon that could not be seen or heard. Now, the invisible threat is digital, but the panic is the same. Analysts warn this is only the beginning. Future wars may be shaped by algorithms, tireless, autonomous, and beyond human reaction, deciding outcomes in a matter of milliseconds. The age of trenches and tanks may be gone. The new battlefield is a labyrinth of networks and unseen malware. In this world, the most powerful weapon may be a single line of corrupted code. Pokrovsk could mark the moment warfare changed forever. The front lines have shifted, from mud to fiber optic cables, from armored columns to lines of code. If this blueprint for invisible conflict spreads unchecked, the stability of nations everywhere may hang in the balance. The echoes of past revolutions in warfare, gunpowder, mechanization, nuclear arms, are suddenly joined by the faint hum of servers and the silence of jammed radios. Even as leaders search for answers, one truth is clear. The old rules of war no longer apply. In this new era, the greatest threat may be the silence before the storm. Just as the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941 showed the world how quickly the balance of power could shift, Pokrovsk may be a similar wake-up call for the information age. If trust in technology can be shattered in just a handful of hours, what must change right now? The events around Pokrovsk are a blaring alarm for every military, government, and civilian who depends on digital networks. The old defenses, shields, codes, firewalls, are relics when adversaries strike at the very heart of the digital world. Relying on a single mode of communication, or trusting that encryption alone will save you, is no longer enough. Priority 1 is resilience. Communication systems must be layered, redundant, and able to survive when satellites go silent or radio waves are jammed. Encryption cannot save you if the whole network goes dark. We need autonomous mesh networks, systems that can self-organize and reroute information, even when central nodes fail. Backup analog lines, such as field telephones and even messengers on motorcycles, must be ready to snap into action the moment the digital lifeline snaps. During the Second World War, field telephones and runners kept armies connected when radios failed. We must relearn these lessons. But technology is only half the battle. Real-time cyber defense and relentless signal monitoring are now as crucial as any armored convoy. Forces must be trained to spot digital deception, misinformation, and breakdowns as they happen, not hours later. Psychological strength is just as vital. Panic can sweep through units or entire cities faster than any cyber virus when systems fail. During the London Blitz, morale and clear information were vital. Today, the challenge is the same, but the threats are invisible. This threat is not confined to soldiers. Governments, first responders, and ordinary people must rethink how much they trust seamless digital infrastructure during a crisis. Are you prepared for the instant your phone, navigation, or even your bank vanishes into static? In 2003, a blackout in the United States and Canada left millions without power. Chaos spread as communication failed. Now imagine this, but with every digital system crippled. Restoring trust is as urgent as restoring broken servers or radios. A society that doubts its information, its eyes and ears, can freeze or fracture without a single shot fired. Transparency in responding to incidents and the flexibility to adapt in real time will decide who leads and who collapses in future conflicts. After the September 11th attacks, rapid, coordinated communication was essential to emergency response. The lesson: resilience is built on both technology and trust. From now on, wars may be decided not by firepower, but by who controls the flow of information, who can keep their side connected as the enemy drowns in uncertainty. Ignoring this lesson leaves whole societies exposed to the next invisible assault, with consequences reaching far beyond the battlefield. In the cyber age, the front line runs through every home, office, and power station. As the dust settles in Pokrovsk, the world stands at a crossroads. Do we adapt, investing in resilience and layered defense, or do we risk the fate that befell those defenders, abandoned not by their courage, but by their connections? The lessons of Pokrovsk are stark, but they are not too late to heed. What comes next will define not just the future of warfare, but the security of every modern society. In the 19th century, nations that failed to adapt to industrialized warfare fell behind. Today, the adaptation is digital. The true battle for Pokrovsk was fought in silence. Will you hear its warning? What happened outside Pokrovsk did not thunder in with tanks or shells. It crept in with sudden silence. Radios went dead, drone screens blinked to black, and an unseen hand cut every line that bound soldiers together. Orders vanished. Reassurances dissolved. Calls for help faded into static. Alone in the digital fog, defenders found themselves not abandoned by leaders, but by the systems that once linked them to each other and to hope. Official voices called it a tactical withdrawal. But those who survived remember a collapse, swift, bloodless, and deeply unsettling. Machines stood silent, not destroyed by enemy fire, but paralyzed by the loss of their digital lifelines. The defense did not break in combat. It evaporated, scattered by uncertainty and silence. This is not just a military lesson, but a warning for every sector that depends on connectivity. This was no accident, no isolated glitch. It was a demonstration, a clear signal that modern warfare now begins and ends with information. The front lines are no longer drawn in trenches, but along fiber optic cables and satellites. In Pokrovsk, the entire defense unraveled because its digital backbone was hit first and hardest. The implications echo far beyond the battlefield. The danger does not stop at distant borders. If we fail to recognize and prepare for this new conflict, the fate that struck Pokrovsk could easily reach our cities, our infrastructure, and our daily lives. Everything we depend on, power, water, transport, even personal safety, relies on digital systems as vulnerable as those on the front. One instant of blindness, one moment when the signal dies, is all it takes for order to fall away and chaos to surge in. In 2017, the NotPetya cyber attack crippled hospitals, shipping companies, and utilities across continents, causing billions in damage. Pokrovsk warns us, the next strike may not be a test, but a catastrophe. This is the new warning. War is no longer fought only with guns and missiles, but with silence and confusion. The collapse at Pokrovsk is not just a lesson for generals. It is a wake-up call for anyone who relies on the unseen networks beneath modern life. Whether you are a soldier, a leader, or simply a citizen with a smartphone, the threat is real, and it is here. Are we ready to defend ourselves against enemies we cannot see, who strike not with bullets, but with silence? The world is watching. The next test may be even closer than we imagine. To prepare, nations must invest not just in cutting-edge cyber defenses, but in public education, resilience drills, and flexible crisis plans. Businesses should establish protocols for operating offline, and families should have emergency communication plans that do not rely solely on smartphones. Just as past generations built bomb shelters and practiced blackout drills, we must now practice digital resilience. In the end, the lesson of Pokrovsk is simple but urgent. The most powerful weapon may no longer explode. It may simply make you doubt what you hear, see, and believe. In a world where trust is the foundation of order, defending that trust is now the highest form of security. Will we learn from the silence of Pokrovsk, or will we too be caught unprepared when the signal fades?